Let me start by saying we always knew this was going to be a difficult year to govern. We began 2009 with a financial system on the brink of collapse, an economy bleeding nearly 700,000 jobs per month, a $1.3 trillion deficit, and two wars that were costly in every sense of the word. And we knew that we might have to make them sometimes without any help from our friends on the other side of the aisle. But we made those decisions. We led. Those actions prevented another Great Depression. They broke the back of a severe recession. The economy that was shrinking by 6% a year ago is now growing at nearly 6% 1 year later. That's because of the work that you did. Harry listed some of the work that you did on behalf of the American people, even under these difficult circumstances. Extending health insurance to 4 million children, protecting consumers from getting ripped off by their credit card companies and kids being targeted by big tobacco. Some things that weren't noted. You reformed defense spending by eliminating waste and saved taxpayers billions while keeping us safe at the same time. You gave billions of dollars of tax relief to small businesses and 95% of working families here in America. So you had to cast more votes to break filibusters last year than in the entire 1950s and 60s combined. That's 20 years of obstruction packed into just one. All that's changed in the last 2 weeks is that our party's gone from having the largest Senate majority in a generation to the second largest Senate majority in a generation. And we've got to remember that. There was apparently a headline after the Massachusetts election. The Village Voice announced that Republicans win a 41-59 majority. It's worth thinking about. We still have to lead. Saving and creating jobs have to continue to be our focus in 2010. Last year, we gave small business the engines of job creation, tax relief, and expanded lending through the SBA. I've proposed additional ideas to help small businesses start up and hire, to raise wages and expand, and get the credit they need to stay afloat. You've made some of these same proposals as well. We should put them into action without delay. We've invested in America's infrastructure, rebuilding roads and bridges and ports and railways, and putting people to work, strengthening our communities and our country. And as you know, the Recovery Act was designed so that a lot of that work is going to be taking place this year, not just last year. Many of the projects you funded come online in the next 6 months, but we can do more, and we should do so without delay. Through the investments you made in clean energy startups, we've not only helped put Americans to work, we're on track to double our nation's capacity to generate renewable energy over the next few years. I've proposed additional tax credits that'll promote private sector hiring and energy conservation. We should do that without delay. And I'm reminded that when it came to health insurance reform in particular, I sought out and supported Republican ideas from the start. So did you. You considered hundreds of Republican amendments and incorporated many of their ideas into the legislation that passed the Senate. So when I start hearing that we should accept Republican ideas, let's be clear, we have. What hasn't happened is the other side accepting our ideas. And I told them, I want to work together when we can, and I meant it. I believe that's the best way to get things done for the American people. But I also made it clear that we'll call them out when they say they want to work with us, and we extend a hand and get a fist in return. Last week, for example, you put up for a vote a bill I supported, Fiscal Commission. We were assured this was going to be bipartisan, only to see 7 Republicans who co-sponsored the idea in the first place suddenly decide to vote against it. Now, I'm open to honest differences of opinion, but what I'm not open to is changing positions solely because it's good short-term politics. So I would just suggest to this caucus, if anybody's searching for a lesson from Massachusetts, I promise you the answer is not to do nothing. You look at an issue right now like health care. So many of us campaigned on the idea that we were going to change this health care system. So many of us looked people in the eye who had been denied because of a pre-existing condition, or just didn't have health insurance at all, or small business owners in our communities who told us that their premiums had gone up 25% or 30%, and we said we were going to change it. Well, here we are with a chance to change it. And all of you put extraordinary work last year into making serious changes that would not only reform the insurance industry, not only cover 30 million Americans, but would also bend the cost curve and save $1 trillion on our deficits, according to the Congressional Budget Office. And so as we think about moving forward, I hope we don't lose sight of why we're here. We've got to finish the job on health care. We've got to finish the job on financial regulatory reform. We've got to finish the job, and I'm absolutely confident that if we do so in an open way, in a transparent way, in a spirit that says to our political opponents that we welcome their ideas, we are open to compromise, but what we're not willing to do is to give up on the basic notion that this government can be responsive to ordinary people and help give them a hand up so they can achieve their American dreams. We will not give up that ideal. If that's where we go, I'm confident that politics in 2010 will take care of themselves. Harry, thank you very much.
Are we willing as Democrats to also push back on our own party and look for that common ground that we need to work with Republicans and to get the answers? And it's really the results that are going to count to our constituents. And we appreciate the hard work that you put into it.
Part of what we've done over the course of this year is to put a floor under people's feet. That's what the Recovery Act did. That's what the interventions in the financial markets did. It broke the back of the recession, stabilized the markets. Nobody's talking about a market meltdown at this point. And people haven't recovered all that they had lost in their 401ks, but they're feeling a little better when they open that envelope now than they did 6 months ago. State budgets were in free fall. That was stabilized. States are still going through incredible pain, but they did not have to lay off teachers and firefighters and cops at the levels that they would have had to otherwise lay them off. What you're going to start hearing is the only way to provide stability is to go back and do what we'd been doing before the crisis. So I noticed yesterday when we were there was some hearing about our proposal to provide additional financing to small businesses and tax credits to small businesses. Some of our friends on the other side of the aisle said, this won't help at all. What you have to do is to make sure that we continue the tax breaks for wealthiest Americans. That's really what's going to make a difference. If the price of certainty is essentially for us to adopt the exact same proposals that were in place for 8 years leading up to the biggest economic crisis since the Great Depression. We don't tinker with health care, let the insurance companies do what they want. We don't put in place any insurance reforms. We don't mess with the banks, let them keep on doing what they're doing now because we don't want to stir up Wall Street. The result is going to be the same. I don't know why we would expect a different outcome pursuing the exact same policies that got us into this fix in the first place.
So my question to you, Mr. President, is speaking to independents, conservative Democrats, moderate Republicans, people who know we have to do this, why should the Democratic Party be trusted, and are we willing to make some of the tough decisions to actually head this country in a better direction?
I'll tell you why the Democratic Party should be trusted, because the last time this budget was balanced, it was under a Democratic president who made some very tough decisions. So, I mean, I think this is pretty straightforward. You know, Bill Clinton made some very hard political decisions. Some of you were there in Congress. You know how tough those votes were. You got no help from the other side. But as a consequence, the economy took off, and you had a $200 billion surplus at the end of his presidency. So I think he deserves enormous credit for that. Those of you who took those votes deserve enormous credit for that. That's why we should have credibility.